Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for this week's golf tournament. Gonna go through what to expect from the weather, DFS tomorrow, some strategies to use if you're going out there and building some showdown lineups, and then afterwards go through the prop averages from round 1 and some props that I like over there on Pick 6, Underdog, and Prize Picks out there for your round 2 exposure. But for either way, first off, welcome into the live stream. So cheers to you out there, wherever you guys are. Let's go ahead and hop into what to expect out there for Friday. Before we do so, I'll mention our sponsor for the live stream, which of course is the crew over there at Ship It Nation. They are a great resource for all of your sources for PGA DFS, also a variety of different other sports, which is why they were a great partner out here for these live streams. They cover a lot of different sports outside of just golf, so that's what I'm covering this time of year. But if you're looking for stuff there with MMA, NHL, NBA playoffs, you got MLB going on as well. They're a great resource for that. They've got NASCAR, other sports that aren't even listed. Make sure to check them out in the description of the video. Code Luke10 is now the code on there. So still waiting on an updated graphic, but it is code Luke10. So make sure you use that if you're going out there and signing up. And that'll get you a discount on any membership over there. We're going to go ahead and start this off with a look at the conditions from today. And then we'll take a look at the weather afterwards, because I think it's shaping up to be a pretty good slate if you're somebody that likes a weather edge, and something that I've completely dived into out there for round 2, and something that has me pretty eager to go out there and enter some lineups. So first and foremost, AM Wave played a little bit over par today. You can see 1.23 shots. PM Wave also slightly over par, but nearly right a 0.85 shot difference between the AM and the PM Wave. So you still saw guys like Sam Burns go nuclear out there in the morning. In fact, guys like Sean O'Hare, right, also an AM Wave golfer, still went out there, and you would have had to have them, right, if you were playing round 1 showdown. But in general, if you take a look at a lot of the top 20 finishers, just your scoring in general, right, is reflected out here in the scoring average. Your PM Wave guys are the ones that played a lot better. So now that it's flipped around, those players are going to be going off early. And the reason for this scoring change, right, we mentioned it out there in the live stream yesterday, is the fact that they had cold temperatures early. They had close to 40, sometimes even like 45-degree temperatures out there at tee, depending on when you started. Super early guys, close to 40-degree temperatures. And by the time it was like 9 a.m., it started to rise a little bit. But really the entire AM Wave played significantly harder than the afternoon. So that even included PM winds that were a little bit higher than what they had in the morning. And now over here, the weather forecast, you can see it's the same kind of weather situation when it comes from the temperature perspective. I guess the main difference we're going to have is going to come to the winds, right, which are pretty much low the entire day. So this is the HRRR forecast out here for Hamilton Golf and Country Club, and there's nothing in terms of a puff of wind, right? Nothing above 7 miles an hour the entire day in terms of sustained winds. Same thing with your wind gusts, right? Nothing above 10 miles an hour the entire day. So if you're talking about, perfect scoring conditions, you're going to have it out there. So I think in general, scoring might improve slightly because of that. A lot of that's going to come down to pin locations, tee boxes, all of that, which of course could throw a huge wrench into things. But just based on the weather conditions alone, I think in general, probably slightly better out here. It looks a little bit warmer the afternoon than what they had for this afternoon, but the morning still looks pretty frigid. So I think you're going to see that PM Wave with that advantage. Is it going to be 0.8 shots? Maybe it's less, right? Maybe it's only half a shot difference. That would still be huge out there for round 2. It might be an entire stroke difference this time, because now they're not playing in a bunch of PM wind, right? The winds pretty much stay down the entire time, at least if this HRRR forecast is accurate. We go over here to the NEM model. It's the same kind of thing, right? Winds don't get above 10 miles an hour. Medio Blue model, same thing too, right? Highest winds are like 8 miles an hour, close to like 5, 6. If we're expecting this to play like today at the very worst, right, that was a 0.85 shot advantage, right? That was sizable. That would have been huge to go out there and lock into lineups. And something that, frankly, I think you want to go out there and do out there for your round 2 lineups. So you'll see that all my player pool, everyone that I'm taking is going to be a PM Wave player, regardless of whether they're up top, regardless if they're mid-tier, lower-tier player, rate value. super like diamond in the rough sort of player, all of them are going to be PM wave players for me. So that advantage was huge today. I think tomorrow it's going to be just as big, if not bigger. And if you're not incorporating that into your exposure, you're not doing it the right way. You're going out there and building your lineup. So going to go ahead, bring up our projections now. We'll talk through some of my top plays of the slate. Some ownership concerns, right? We'll talk through some of the chalk in each range as we talk through it too, and give you an idea, a little taste, right, of my exposure for tomorrow. So we're not going to get through all my plays, of course, for all of my personal exposure, all of my projections, which are not the same thing as Ship It Nation. So two different things, of course. They're a great sponsor. They're a partner here on the channel, but I have my own thing that I do, of course, right out here for golf. So if you want access to everything that is blacked out on here, just to clarify, that's on my Patreon page. So check that out. There's a link in the description of this video to that. And it's, again, these projections are different than what you'll see on other sites because they're the ones that I do myself. So you got, of course, like projected ownership on their player pool. And we're going to have some players that we talk through here on live stream. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on down there. Great Colin Burns. Way too early to say that. Yeah, good first round, right? Listy looks good for round 2 showdown. Tee to green was insane, right? He lost 4 strokes putting. I saw that today. Unfortunately, as an AM wave golfer, or else I would be completely all in with him. So if you're able to somehow only play a contest with AM wave players, for sure. But I kind of worry about that. What's going on? Was I close to taking that down in Showdown today? I didn't play any Showdown today, so no Showdown for the big guy here. I'm not a big round 1 Showdown player. If I was, I probably would have been close to taking it down. So in hindsight, Ryan, I wish I was. I'm doing really well for my main slate stuff. So, and yeah, I wish I knew exactly how well I was doing, frankly, because yeah, Draftkings is down right now, if you guys haven't checked. And also why the current score tab can't be imported right away. So a little bit annoying. Obviously, it's incorporated into the ownership, into everything, right? Shots gained metrics are incorporated into my projections, but it's annoying that it's Draftkings is down in general, and second off, that I can't import my current score tab. That's kind of annoying. Who are my 3 locks for round 2 showdown? I'm not locking anyone, so I'm not going to have anyone for you in terms of locks, but we're going to talk through a bunch of different plays here, Matt, that you may or may not like yourself. If there's 3 guys that stand out to you that you like the most that we talk through, then take them, right? That's the best way to do that. And I'll have 3 locks for you. J-Biz says, come on, Sahith. Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, come on, Sahith. Yeah, he had a rough day, huh? I wasn't tracking him that much. I was mostly tracking my outright bets, like Fleetwood, Cam Young, that sort of stuff. Akshay, who kind of sputtered towards the end. But yeah, Sahith, I know he played over par. He's got to turn that around. Brian says you did not play Burns stupidly for Showdown. Hey, you got round 2 to get back after him. So I got some ideas for you guys. Let's get into it. If you have any players you want my specific take on, just let me know. So this is the DFS section. We're going to build some lineups after, more so talk strategy, right, after we talk through some of these players. But the idea on this isn't just to give you plays, right? Like I am giving you players that I am getting to, but it's more so, and of course there's plenty I'm keeping off of here, right, that I'm, of course, I'm playing as well on top of this. That if you want to see all of those players, right, check out the version on Patreon. But the point of this is to more so give you an idea of the types of players that I'm looking at. So in the PM wave, the chalkiest player by far, chalkiest player period out there for round 2 showdown is Rory McIlroy at $12,400. And that shouldn't be a surprise given that he played pretty well out there in round 1, right? Shot 4 under par, I believe, by the end of his round. 4 under par by the end of his round. I have him at 42% projected ownership, but no, in some GPPs, he might be 50%. Some GPPs, he might be closer to like 38% ownership. Some single entries, he might even be like 60, 65% owned. So this is going to be a very volatile ownership projection. A lot of it is going to depend on the contest that you're entering, but it's kind of like the main slate, right? You sign up for that if you're playing a chalky Rory, and I'll play him just because he's in the PM wave. He was playing so well. I don't have exposure to him for the main slate. So for me in round 2 showdown, it's a good way for me to get exposure to a player that is just clearly the best talent in the field. So if he was AM wave, it'd be a completely different story. He would be one of the easier fades in human history. But coming out of the PM wave, honestly, the ball striking was, I don't want to say superb, but it was good enough out there for his round one stats. So just to give you an idea with Rory, he gained 3 strokes approach. That is, of course, the main thing to hone in on there. He was a slight gainer off the tee, around the green, actually a slight loser. Putter was not all that crazy, right? About 1 stroke gained on the day. So he has a lot of room for improvement. Of course, he didn't have that spike putting round yet. And it's not like he gained 2.5 strokes off the tee quite yet. So the kind of player that I'll get over the field on, you can see he was in the number 1 model ranking in every single category heading into the week. And at 40%, I'm not playing him in every lineup, right? Just to be fully transparent with how I'm playing my lineups, I'm going to be at about 55, maybe 60% exposure out there on Rory. And then I'm going to have a lot of lineups that drop down a little bit, right? Whether it's an Alex Noren that I'm starting them with, or maybe even a 9K player, right, that I'm starting lineups with. There are going to be plenty of other sort of lineups that I'm getting to. So whether that's 40% of them, whether that's closer to, I think the lowest I'd go on Rory ownership would probably be like 50 would probably be the lowest that I'd go out there with my personal exposure. Obviously, I haven't built my lineups quite yet, right? As I just finished my projections and player poll before I went live on here. But a Rory backfire, I'm thinking I'm going to get like 50% and take 50%, maybe slightly less than that out here with some of these other sort of builds. So that's how I'm handling Rory. I would say that you could fade them easily, even if you're playing that weather edge, and get different elsewhere. What I'm choosing to do, right, is, or actually, you don't even really have to get different elsewhere. If you go ahead and just exclude Rory, I'm choosing to take Rory, right, and then get different in that 7, maybe 8K range, right? Going out there, mixing in a few guys that are sub 5%. If you want to go out there and just exclude Rory and then take some chalkier guys, you start going to have to mix in at least one more pivot into your lineups, right? Doing a Rory fade is not going to be enough out there for round 2 showdown. But if you choose to take that route, that's a huge portion of the field that you can just square off right there, which it's a risky fade. You're fading the best player of the field. So just take that. It's not quite like fading Scotty, which I am not prone to doing now. I just pretty much play Scotty every time he plays now at this stage. He's not on that kind of level, but it's a weak enough field where he's not at that level, but he's at least getting close to that kind of level out here, this kind of field, where if you're going to fade him, though, you're going to get a bunch of leverage. So that's a choice where I could see an argument for both directions. I'm giving you my take on it. Again, it's slight leverage to the field. And again, even if he flops, right, I'm going to have plenty of lineups that don't have him. If he ends up getting there, which getting there might just be like a 4 under par round, like he had for round 1. That kind of score maybe wasn't the highest score you could have possibly had, but in some of the smaller GPPs, which I don't want to give away all my exposure because I have a really good plan for how I plan to exploit tomorrow from the showdown perspective. A lot of it comes down to contest selection, so I don't want to give away too much. But I'm not going to have to have the nuts to win tomorrow. I'm just going to have some really damn good lineups to win a lot of money. I'm going to have a lot of high volume for round 2. Hopefully, I got to make sure the contest selection's okay. I haven't reserved yet, which is a risky proposition. So maybe I do that at some point here in the live stream. But I'm looking forward to it, especially my non-Rory lineups. There's going to be a lot of leverage to be had. So moving on from that topic, Sahith, super low owned, but he's AM Wave. A lot of AM Wave golfers up top, which makes Alex Noren, right, who did not have his best stuff out there for Thursday, a potential option, right? He's one of the only PM Wave golfers to choose from. His shots gained metrics across the board were pretty crappy because he's played a scrappy round, right? Let's face it, he just didn't have his best stuff. But round 2 showdown, one thing I know about bounce back players is that you have to embrace them for round 2 showdown, right? Round 3, round 4 showdown, a little bit of a tougher prospect, right? Especially round 4 showdown when you have a whole 3-round sample. But after just 18 holes, right, if you're holding too many grudges against players, right, you're going to get into trouble because a lot of players will, not have their stuff for one day. Maybe the guys that shot like +4, +5, you avoid, right? But if they shot -1 even, maybe even +1, +2, right? Don't just cross them off the list, right? Your player pool out there for round 2 should not just be guys that all went out there and shot like -3 or better. You can have a few of them. Those players, by the way, are going to be chalkier, right, than the guys that didn't play as well. But know that it's really hard to back up a low round, right? To go out there, shoot -3, -4, and back it up with another, -4, -5 round. And for round 2 showdown, especially if you're playing like large field GPPs, if you're playing in smaller field stuff, right, you still need a super low round, right? Big field GPPs, you need the nuts, right? You're going to need -6, maybe even -7 rounds, right, out there in your lineups. If you're playing a smaller field GPP, you still need to have a really solid score. So you're still looking for at least like 4 guys, right, that are shooting like -5, -6. You're looking for players that first off are playing in the proper wave, and you want to be making sure that you're taking players that aren't completely out of form. So the way to do it, right, is to take guys that just kind of spun their wheels, right, weren't all that far off, and hope that they can get things corrected out there for round 2, take them at lower ownership, and that's where you get your leverage in your lineup. So if you're going to take a chalky Rory, that's fine. If you're going to take a chalky Sam Burns, that's totally fine too. You can see, right, I'm choosing to play Rory, right, who I think is a better higher tier player. I'm choosing to fade a Sam Burns, who I wouldn't say is a lower tier player, right? I bet this guy outright, right? I took him in 40% of my lineups out there in GPP. So let's not go crazy, right? I'm obviously not fading him for anything but this round 2 showdown slate. But if somebody that isn't quite the talent of Rory, right, I'm not going to take at 30% ownership. So he's going to be a spot, right, that I'm differentiating to the field. And then outside of that, right, the guys that I'll play at ownership are the guys up top, right? Your Rorys, your highly talented players, your scrubs, right? So if there's scrubs down here in the 7K range, and there are some that are getting a bunch of ownership that are a lot chalkier than their counterparts, I'm not playing them, right? So if they're 10% or plus ownership down here in the 7K range, it's few and far in between that I'd even consider playing somebody down there. So there are a few chalkier players, I guess, just to give you a few off the top of my head. A lot of it is tied to the leaderboard, right? So the guys that are just playing better in general. So I know that Højgaard's getting some exposure. McIntyre is way chalkier than he probably should be. He's also pretty expensive. Again, a lot of that just because of how he played out here for today. Who else? Eric Van Rooyen getting attention because of his round, but he's playing really well. So like you kind of understand, right, where some of this chalk is coming in. But down here in this lower 7K range, if it's upper 7K range, it's like 50-50 whether I'd want to play somebody that's close to 10% ownership. Lower 7K range, there's absolutely no chance. So let me give you a few examples of that, which I think I can do on the other tab here without completely leaking all of the ownership. So let me double check this. So yeah, it looks like I can do that. Let me double check on it. So down here in the 7K range, your higher owned players, Mac Messner, I have around 10%. He is PM wave, so that kind of hurts, right, to not be able to play him. Ryan Fox is about 10% ownership, right? Solid round from him out there as well. Kind of hurts because he's PM wave. Højgaard too, right? He's PM wave, and I also bet him outright this week, so it kind of hurts not to play him out there. But those are your highest-owned players, and even some of those guys, right, at the top end of the 7K range, like who else, for example? I guess Berger's getting some ownership. I've got him at the higher end, close to 10% ownership there. All those sort of players I'm fading and just taking their lower-owned counterparts. So we're going to talk about a few examples as we go through our plays here on the live stream. But who else would be a higher-owned option? Andrew Novak, I've got getting a bunch of steam. I've got Nick Hardy at some ownership. Joel Damon at 10%. David Skins, right? Of course, he's your leader at this stage. So I've got him at like 6.5% ownership. So he's way down into the 6K range. So he's in a completely different sort of pricing scenario. But 6.5% down there is like 20% over here in the 7K range. So that's some of the chalk that I guess you wouldn't keep an eye on before playing. But all of the players that we're going to talk up here are sub 10% for the most part, right? I guess Tom Kimmer, he's an 8K player, so he's not quite that low owned, but all of my leverage is coming down here. So if I want to take a Rory, right, at 40%, I can afford to do so, right? Because of the leverage that I'm getting in other spots. So all of them are PM Wave players. We're not going to say that with everyone because, of course, right, my entire player pool are PM Wave players. So it would get kind of old just saying that over and over again. Right? It wouldn't make much sense to be like, oh, this is a PM Wave guy. That's why I'm getting to him. Let's just talk about other reasons why I think he has upside, because that's the key, right? You have your weather edge. You've got to make decisions on players, right? You've got to find some chalkier guys that maybe you take a shot on. Maybe you just fade all the higher owned options, which, by the way, if you're on the Patreon page, that's totally an option for you, right? You can just go on there, say, who are all the higher owned players? I'll fade them. Take out all the AM guys because I'm not playing any of them too, right? And just play the lower owned PM guys. And you'd probably have a really good slate. or at least you'd have a chance for it, right? Obviously, some chalk's going to get there. You might not have the nuts, but I'd venture to say that you'd have a bunch of lineups that are at least somewhat live out there in the GPP, and all of them are going to be unique. So there are obviously different ways that you can use my Patreon, my projections, all of that, but you'll see that reflected with my exposure. Where are we at? Am I looking for guys who kind of started crappy or putted crappy that had good shots gained approach? In general, yes, Matt. So my projections for fantasy points take that into account. So it looks at shots gained tee to green and obviously incorporates that into the projection. What it does for putting is it looks at a player's long-term putting and completely ignores round one. So I don't necessarily boost guys, right, that it putted crappy round one. But what I'll do is I'll look past that performance, right? If they played well from tee to green, I still look at that as a plus. So hopefully it gives you an idea of how I treat players. That's how it works for me, just like in my brain too, with evaluating guys. And with my projections, it's handled the same way. Who disappointed me and impressed me from round one? So disappointment, I guess Thagala, he's the one spend up I took that kind of shit the bed out there. Everyone else kind of kept it together. Who surprised me? Let me see. I don't know if there's a massive surprise. I guess if I look at the leaderboard, I'd get a better chance. I was looking for the scores on players, right? And try and get an idea of some of the top options. I would say Skins, but he's been playing really well. Sean O'Hare, obviously massive surprise at -7. Who else would qualify? Trace Crow, good to see him coming back, though. He's a very hit or miss sort of player. I wouldn't count on it happening for round two, though. He's been a little bit of a loose cannon out here on tour the last half year or so out here on tour. I'd say ADDC always surprises me when he pops off, but he was supposed to be a lot better than what we've seen out here on tour. So maybe just showing glimpses of what's to come someday, right? When he actually fulfills a lot of that potential that people say he has. I don't know. Yeah, some of the scrubs that played well, I guess, be the surprisers for me. What's going on, Frank? Yeah, it has been a long time. Been following me since 2022. So yeah, roughly 2 years. Cheers to that, brother. Got my water here. Cheers to you. These lines makers need to back off. You know it, boss. What is the projected cut line? So I'll give you the data golf stuff, and then I'll give you my take on it. So data golf has the cut line at 34% -1, and then even par is 39%. I would say it's probably going to -1. So I would just kind of account for that in your lineups, right? Assume that it gets to -1. It might only be even, but just based on conditions probably getting easier with the lower winds, I'd say -1. So that's my take on it. The stats kind of lean that way too. You thought I was JBC on DraftKings? So no, I'm Gsluke on DraftKings, Brian. No, I'm not JBC. Shall we be into a 1-5 build more than 2-4? I'm going 6-0 PM. So my take, Sam, is that you go 6-0. DraftKings is back up. That is clutch. So we can build some lineups together, Metro. Thank you for the heads up on that. That's a good one. Good shout on that. All right, so let's talk through some of my cheaper plays. So obviously, Rory coming with some ownership. Where are we going to get different, right? And it's on in a few cases. I mean, I guess I'll point them out as we go through them. Players that just played really well in approach. And in a lot of cases, just guys that were better players than what we saw today. And in some cases, guys that just had decent rounds. I mean, even par, right? It's not sexy. It's not flashy. It's not going to make up somebody mega chalky like Tom Kim, who shot even par today out here for round 2 showdown. What does, right, is when they shoot -3, -4, right? That's when everyone wants to click on them over there on DraftKings. And even par, sneaky round out there for Tom Kim, which was slightly better than the field average, has him at about 12% ownership. Now, I think that there might be some steam here. My intuition has him maybe closer to 14-15% out there in some GPPs. I think in single entry, some if you're like higher dollar stuff, you might be closer to 20% ownership. So that's the thing about these showdown projections is they're kind of susceptible, right, to a lot of variance. But in general, you know, if you're taking them in 35-40% of lineups like I plan on doing, right, I'm still going to have that leverage to the field. So keep in mind that you might have to play them a little bit heavier than you think to get that leverage. but another PM Wave player that played decently for round one and I think has a lot of upside out there for Friday. Mark Hubbard, same thing, even par round for him, right? Also a PM Wave player. Fits the golf course quite well, right? He plays well at the shorter tracks because of his lack of off the tee firepower. He's a much better approach player, really streaky putter, and at $8,500 in the PM Wave, also single digit ownership, probably worth a few looks. I also got Nick Taylor in the player pool, right? He's $8,000 PM Wave, which I might as well just stop mentioning, like I said before. But single digit ownership might creep into the lower teens, I would imagine, in some of your other contests. But he's $8,000. I've got him projected decently out here in this price range, and he's the hometown guy. Right? He's got to go out there and do decently to go out there and make the cut. I think he's probably got to shoot like -2. What is his score? Let me double check. What did Nick Taylor end at? Was it even par, something around there? Let's see. Let me get a sip of my water, and I'll double check on that real quick. Which, by the way, I can just control F it, which I always forget to do, but there we go. So he's +2. He's probably going to have to shoot -3, maybe -2, right, to go out there and make the cut. So he's got that going for him. Doesn't want to miss the cut at his home open out there. He's going to have the nutted conditions. A very good showdown player in general because he's streaky. We'll go out there and have -4, -5 rounds. Also prone to blow up rounds, which it kind of saw out there for Thursday. But because of that variance, he's quick to turn it around, right, after having one of those blow up days. So I'm looking for the bounce back. He's going to have plenty of time in between rounds to kind of figure it out. So whether it's on the range, maybe it's just an off the course kind of thing that gets him going the right direction. I like the fact that he's PM, right, has some extra time, really low ownership, also in the proper wave, checks a lot of those boxes too. Also got Seamus Power. So Seamus Power, I believe, shot over par today. Also might have been one of those +2ers. So let me double check that. So yeah, Seamus Power shot +2 round one. Kind of stinks not having it on the tab there, but I remembered most of these players' scores off the top of my head, which is kind of a sick thing to say, but it's true. But $7,600, a player with a lot of birdie or better upside, particularly at these shorter tracks. Right? Longer golf courses, he lacks a little bit of firepower because he's not an elite tier off the tee player. He's not a slouch off the tee. I wouldn't call him a short player by any means, but he's not somebody that's going to overpower par fives, right? Drivable par fours. This is more so the kind of player that can throw some darts. He's a streaky iron player, and he's a solid putter, right? Makes a lot of those 10 to 15 footers. That's what we want in a showdown player, right? Somebody that could spike with the flat stick, right? Set up a lot of birdie looks, and then more importantly, right, convert on maybe 6 of his 8 looks from 10 to 15 feet. That's how you go out there and you have a spike performance in showdown. So he's that sort of player. It's why I like him for first round leader. It's why a lot of people bet him for first round leader, particularly if he's going off early, right? Early Thursday morning of a golf tournament. A little bit of a different situation here where the PM wave is of course, the advantageous side, but also at about just 6% ownership. Kevin Yu had excellent approach play today. Didn't have an outrageously bad round, but not one of his better performances by any means. So let's find Kevin Yu on here. So there's Kevin Yu. So actually, wrong tab. I want to look at his shots gained metrics. So my apologies. So yeah, Kevin Yu today, right, gained nearly 2 strokes on approach in this round. I've got him at about 3.9% projected ownership. In the proper wave, like that's a perfect spot to go out there and take in like maybe 15% of your lineups. It'd make a key spot of leverage, right? If he hits and you have him in 15%, which for a 150 maxer might be like 22 of your lineups, that's huge, right? He could be a massive piece of leverage against the field. Not a lot of people that you're competing against that have Kevin Yu. Maybe it slightly goes up ownership wise, right? Because I'm mentioning it here on live stream, but either way, right? Still a solid player to get to. And more importantly, leaning into that weather edge. Johnny Vegas is a multiple-time winner of the RBC Canadian Open. So if you're new to PG DFS, you may not remember that because it's from before your time. I don't know if we want to put that much credit into that. I don't know if it really means anything. What I do know is that he's a high upside birdie maker, a player that's going off in the proper wave, and he's low owned. Grayson Sig, a player that I like to remain slate. Also, a little bit, what is going on with my spreadsheet? I apologize for that, guys. I'll see if I can get it to stop doing that. But Grayson Sig here at $7,000. Another player that I'll get over the field on. I've got it sub 5% ownership that I thought was a decent fit for this golf course heading in. And now after he struggled, right, a little bit overlooked. Down here in the sixes, I've got Patton Kazire mixed in. Some people were playing him for main slate this week, but a little bit of a rough start. So I've got him at low ownership. Another player I'm taking a shot on late. And then also Kevin Doherty here at $6,600. He's 0.6% owned. So maybe he gets to 1% because I mentioned him here. But $6,600, a player that is extremely long off the tee, so has some firepower to go out there and bully this golf course a little bit. If he's hitting fairways, this sort of player is making 5-6 birdies. He also is pretty decent with the flat stick too. He can get it working the right direction. So I think he's a relatively, he's got a chance at least, right? To shoot something like 5-6 under. Does that mean he's going to do so? No, right? There's a reason why he's sub 1% owned. But at the same time, he has that wide range of outcomes that we're looking for, right? That potential for that high ceiling, that performance. And he's $6,600 and a late player. Somebody that's going off of the tee times. I also have David Lipsky on here. He's sub 5% ownership. Another ball striker that I'll mix in, likes the shorter golf courses where it's not all about that power off the tee. And is there anyone else? I believe that's it out there for the players here on the live stream. So outside of the few guys I mentioned as chalk, there's not that much to worry about. I'm going to go on my other tab real quick and take a look at the ownership again and see if there's anyone else that's too notable out there from the strategy perspective. So let me see. And we'll catch up on chat as well. Yeah, it's probably still having some issues, but I heard it was back up per Metro. So McNeely's PM wave, not to give away too much on how much I like him, but he's a high upside birdie maker. He sets up a lot of looks now that he's, kind of figured out the ball striking aspect, and he's in the proper wave. So, and he's low owned. So yeah, he's I'll just say, yeah, I'm playing him out there for round 2. I think he's a pretty decent option, a bounce back option per se. What's going on, Phil? Hopefully you're having a solid Thursday night out there. So that's it for a majority of the plays I wanted to go through. What I'm doing now in another tab is going through ownership and just pointing out some of the other higher owned options. So Eric Van Rooyen, just to give you guys an idea, he's in the mid-teens. So compared to some of the other guys around him, that's pretty inflated ownership. I know I didn't mention anything about Aaron Rai before, but he's also getting some steam. Outside of Sahith Theegala, and I guess to some extent also Alex Noren, both of those guys are low owned up top. Everyone else is garnering ownership. So Rory, extremely high owned. Tommy Fleetwood would be second in ownership, at least in terms of like your guys at the top end of the nines, right? Higher than 10K options. I have Sam Burns at over 30%, like you guys saw before or can see here on the spreadsheet. So in terms of actual ownership, right, Sam Burns is number 2 in the field when it comes to total ownership. But the interesting aspect is that guys like Cam Young, Lowry, Connors, that are all AM Wave players, by the way, are about 15, sometimes even close to 20% ownership. So people would rather play those guys as opposed to even like Noren, where he's in the proper wave. And of course, as opposed to an AM wave Sahith Theegala, right? He played horribly round 1 and is in the bad wave going off early. So those are some of the ownership trends. I guess down here in the 7s, I mentioned some of the chalk there already. Is there anyone that I didn't mention, I guess? Make sure. No, I think I mentioned all the major pieces of chalk. Your quote-unquote chalk down low, Carson Young's like 4%. Vince Whaley is 4%, right? Like it's not the kind of chalk that you guys are thinking. Like ADDC, right? I've got it 4.3%. Zach Blair. Also, if there's anyone that's chalky down low, it's Zach Blair at 7.4%. Those sort of players I'd be avoiding. Sean O'Hare's 4%. I guess you could say that's kind of chalky. Maybe you'd want to avoid that too. But it's not the worst piece of chalk in human history. Right? There's a difference between a 40% piece of chalk up top and then a piece of chalk that's like 4% down low. So those are some of the higher end options that you might want to keep an eye on. Let's see. $6,100 and below. If I had to go down there, yikes. I'll just say not my favorite thing, that's for sure. Let me see if I can get Draftkings working on the sideline as I go over your question for you. Okay, it's going to make me log in. Let me do this real quick, and then I'll get to your question. So I was hearing that it wasn't working, right? So I I wanted to see if I could load it early, just in case. Let's see. I just got to get the lineup screen up. It doesn't have to load anything else afterwards. There we go. There's the PGA Showdown stuff. All right, sweet. Looks like we're good to go. Alrighty. So your question. So 6,100 and below. That's a tough scene, my man. I gotta say. But if you're going that low, you didn't even say like 63 or 6,400 and below. You said 61 and below. The answer is no one, frankly. All these guys down here absolutely suck. Tom Whitney, if you like put a gun to my head and you said like play somebody down there, I guess it'd be Tom Whitney. But they all pretty much suck. So I'd avoid most of them. If if you're doing the prudent thing, would be not to play somebody that far down the board. Let me bring up DraftKings. Let's talk through some lineup construction real quick and get this. Yeah, it's a good thing that they have it up, that have it back up. Thank you so much for the heads up. So we can build a lineup together. Thigala wasn't the optimal for round one showdown. Was he actually? So there's a difference between the optimal and the winning lineup, right? I mean, just checking his scorecard today, there's no chance he was, right? I know there were players that scored better than him. So I don't know. I don't know about the optimal lineup. Maybe winning lineup in some of the showdown GPPs, but there's a huge difference there, right? Like, for example, Sahith, 1, 2, 3 birdies. I can tell you off the top of my head that Rory outscored him by a bunch, right? And you had a bunch of slap dicks as your optimal players, right? It was like Skins, O'Hare, McIntyre, Palmer that you could play with Rory. So you could obviously fit him into the lineup. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one, Chief. Yeah, winning lineup. Yeah, big difference there. I get what you're saying, obviously. That's crazy that somebody won with the gala. But yeah, definitely wasn't the optimal lineup. Big difference there. So let's talk about this with me. Let's talk about some strategy. So what I want to do here is just build a lineup together, kind of talk through my thought process. We're going to go through props here in like 5, maybe 10 minutes. So if you have any last second DFS questions, now's the time to throw them down live chat. First off, if you guys haven't already smashed that like button, first off, what are you waiting to do? Go ahead, do that for your boy down there in chat. And of course, go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament this week. So I don't know if you have any outright bets that you've taken or just who you end up, who you just think is going to win at this stage of the event. Go ahead, let me know down in the live chat. If you're watching this on replay, go ahead and comment that down below. In the live chat, I'm just curious of your thoughts, but if you're watching this on replay, it helps boost the algorithm, right? Get this out there to more people. Of course, liking the video does that too. And if you subscribe, you don't miss any of the content that's coming as well as the round 3 and round 4 live streams. That's the plugs. Let's get through a few lineups together and then talk some props. We've got some averages already calculated, some prop boards out here on both sites. So we're going to have a lot to cook there, but still some stuff to do here with DFS. Let me double check on the stream, make sure it's running properly. It's a running chore when you don't have like an editor doing this live, right? I hope he wins. That'd be sick. He took Burns too. Oh boy, don't mush him, guys. That's why I'm not playing him for round 2 showdown. No joke. So I don't mush him too much. How do I feel about Mitchell over 3.5 birdies? We'll talk about props. So I'll give you a better response here in like 5 minutes. Of course, Mike, thank you for stopping by in the live stream. I appreciate you stopping by for us. What's going on, Sam? Let it know when it's a better time to DM me. Just DM me the question. I saw that you said like, hey man, I wanted to talk to you. Just shoot me the question, dude. I'll respond to questions and whatnot, but I don't know what you were expecting with that. Just shoot me your question, Sam, and I got you. So let's go through this. So in terms of building a GPP lineup, if I'm starting with Rory, it doesn't constrict you that much, right? Unless you're planning on taking just all the chalk out there, you're going to have 5 more spots to mix in your leverage. So I know a lot of times, right, we always talk about avoiding those higher owned players, and that's true for an entire lineup. But if you have one guy that is higher owned, like a Rory, and it can even be like a 40-50% owned player like Rory, that's totally fine. Like, you can get away with that. That's something that you can still take care of in terms of leverage at other spots, especially when it's only one chalky player like a Rory McIlroy. So even if you took a Rory and your second man in was maybe a little bit chalkier than normal. So just to give you an idea, what is EVR PM? I don't believe so, right? So let me find a chalky PM guy real quick. Let's see. So not Pendrith, not Taylor. There's not a bunch of them. So I guess kind of Keith Mitchell. So yeah, let's throw Keith Mitchell in there. So Keith Mitchell is going to be our like kind of chalky PM wave player. This would be totally fine as a second man in. Up here in the 8K range, we're going to double up in this range, take a second guy. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in, I believe, Pendrith, who's PM wave. Another guy is about 10% ownership. So again, we haven't made any drastically crazy plays at this stage, right? Yet still, we're good when it comes to the ownership perspective. I want to go down here and take our pivot at this stage, our player in the 6K range that we're going to get different with. We talked about a few options. You can go the whole way down to like 6,500, 6,400. I think that's where like the mean drop off is. So Lipsky, of course, was a player that I mentioned before. Another option up here, maybe a little bit further, right? Kazire, right? I also took, right, in a few lineups, or at least I plan on taking out there in a few lineups that I'm building. So that puts us at $7,000 remaining. Perhaps we dabble in this like top end of the 6Ks. So 69, maybe $6,800 with our second to last man in. So tea time waves up the top of my head are a little bit brutal right now. So let me just double check on the other sheet real quick. So top end of that range, we go Hoffman, not my favorite choice. You've got Whaley there, PM. Robbie Sheldon is my favorite option. In fact, it's a player that I'm playing. So let's just go ahead and throw Robbie Sheldon in out there in that portion of the player pool. And then at 7,100 or cheaper, right, you can find your favorite player. So Draftkings frowns upon, right, giving all 6 players in the lineup. But it's not this combination of 6 that I'm giving you. It's the thought process, right? And just to kind of like, if you took Johnny Vegas as your last man in here, you'd have way more than enough leverage, right? So sure, Rory 40-50%, that's chalk. You're not getting that much different with guys like Mitchell or Pendrith, but Kazire's sub 5%, Robbie Sheldon's sub 5%, and if you rounded it off with Johnny Vegas, it's another sub 5%er. So even with a product ownership that's a little bit higher than you want with your top 3 players, your last 3 spots in this kind of lineup would more than offset it. And even if you went chalkier than this, let's say you went with chalkier guys instead of Mitchell, Pendrith, like you found a way to get a higher product ownership, you'd still be able to get away with it, right? Even if you only had 2 pivots, right? Let's say that instead of Kazire or Sheldon, you found a chalkier player to use instead, right? Of one of these 2 options, you could still easily have more than enough leverage here. So if our last man in here, right, just like in theory was like a 15%er, this lineup would still be fine out there for the large field GBPs. So I guess point that out to tell you that a lot of times people overdo it when it comes to getting leverage. It's about getting different 2-3 spots out there in a lineup, not to get different in all 6 spots in your showdown lineups. I'd say that's especially the case for rounds 2 and 3. Round 4, you've got to mix in a little bit more players towards the top, but it's still 2-3 guys at the top at the very most that you want out there in your round 4 showdown lineups. So round 2 showdown, that's the thought process for GBPs. If I was playing cash, the only thing I'll say, I'm not a big cash guy. I'm not even sure really who I'd use for cash because I'm not going to do it for tomorrow, but it'd be all PM guys. No doubt about it. I would only play PM guys, and I'd go about it that way. And if you do that, I think you'd have a really good showdown slate, particularly if you can find some of the safer PM guys and players that showed you something tee to green out there in round 1. So that's the strategy from that aspect. We talked a lot about the GBPs. If there's any last second DFS stuff, we'll talk about it. If not, we're gonna go through props. Where are we at? Yeah, I play a lot of single entries. So for main slate, Gsluke will be in the $5 150 max almost every single time. For single entries, it's usually a lot of the smaller contests. So it's probably that. But yeah, Gsluke, look out for me. I'm in a lot of contests. It will be for tomorrow, so look out for me. What's going on, Samuel? EVR. So thoughts on him? So let me double check on it. Or are you saying that he's going to win the golf tournament? Okay. Not sure which, but yeah, he's AM wave. So if you're talking about a play, that's the one worry I have is that his tee time is early. You choose Lowry, Sawhith, and Fleetwood to finish top 20. I like that. And yeah, Fleetwood would be a good one because I took him outright. So I definitely hope he finishes top 20. Why PM guys, Mike? So yeah, if you're just joining us, there was a distinct advantage today if you took the AM wave players. So if we go on here and show you this, right? AM wave played 1.23 strokes, right? So if you took those guys, you played a harder golf course than the PM that played just 0.38 over par. So the PM wave golfers had easier golf course, a lot of that due to the weather. The reason for that today is the early conditions were cold. It was about 45 degrees for at least the first 2-3 hours. And you'll see out here for Friday, it's the same thing, right? Early conditions are a lot cooler than the afternoon. So you're going to see the scoring conditions reflect that. The wind conditions are low the entire day. So I think regardless of when you're teeing off, the wind isn't going to be as big a factor. But if anything for round one, the winds were higher in the afternoon. Right? The morning was really calm early, especially like first 3 hours. There was zero wind out there. PM wave had gusts the entire time. So, and it still played 0.8 shots easier. Now you have the temperatures favoring the PM guys and no wind. That's why the PM guys are the move. They're playing a much easier golf course, and if anything, that's the one thing that you should 100% do. It's going to be a sizable edge out there for tomorrow. So that's it for DFS, guys. Again, if you're just here for DFS, go ahead and smash like button before you hop on out of here, and let's go out there and smash for our round 2 exposure. Hopefully, I see you guys at the top of some of those leaderboards. Hopefully, competing with me, trying to take a few down, so we can go out there, cash a few lineups ourselves. If you're not winning GPPs, hopefully you're getting close out there and finding some profit. Let's go out there and have yourself a day. So that's for all the DFS people. If you're still hanging around for props, still plenty to talk about here. We're going to go through averages, props on both sites. I still haven't entered anything yet. So a lot of deep diving that we're going to do here in the live stream. So buckle on in. A little bit of at least probably 25, 30 minutes left here. So let's talk through these stat averages. So stat averages from today were actually harder than I expected. And in terms of how my props did today, it was actually the worst day I've had in 2 weeks. That's because I haven't had a losing day in over 2 weeks at this stage. So that streak I was talking about came to an end, I guess, as soon as I started talking about it a little bit too much. All good things come to an end at some point. So I'm not that surprised by it, but definitely ready to get back on the horse, right, and create an entire different streak. But round 1 averages, like I said, were harder. So we got a little bit slapped, especially out there with a few early props. But surprisingly, I took mostly PM players, which turned out to be the move, right? Obviously, PM wave played easier than the morning. The crazy thing is the PM guys I took were the ones that sold. Whereas Sam Burns, right, was a prop I mentioned on the live stream last time, right? He shot -7, right? Had no issues covering. He was playing on the harder golf course. So of all things, I think that was like the the craziest thing that's happened at this point, is that the props that all should have probably hit didn't. But either way, that happens. That's going to happen with props. Even if you have good takes, you're going to have days that you get a lot of things that go your way, and you end up being a lot luckier than you should have. And then, of course, days like today where maybe it doesn't go your way. So I'm not gonna take it too hard. So scoring average was 0.81 over par. If you take a look at it for the entire day of scoring. Birdie or better average was 3.13. Bogey or worse, 3.78. Fairway average, you can see, was about 7.6. And then your green average was about 12 per round. So those we can all use as reference points out here for round 2. And with the low winds, the similar temperatures, I think if anything, it gets slightly easier. It's kind of hard to say without knowing all the pin locations yet. But I'm assuming that if anything, these averages get slightly better than what we had for today, but I'm not expecting that much movement when it comes to any one category. So keep these in mind when we're looking at some of the boards here in a minute, as there'll be good reference points, like I said, for tomorrow. So let me refresh this. Let me refresh Prize Picks. Let me bring up a few of the different odds sites real quick. So FanDuel, we're going to do that. We're also going to bring up Caesars and DraftKings and stuff. So we can do some line shopping. So hopefully, now that we've given them a little bit of time to post their boards, we'll have everything to compare to, which will give us all the information we need for our props and can get this thing rolling. Let's do that. And I didn't unplug my mic. Perfect. Looks like we're good to go. Or did I? Nope, we're good. No. Why is it bringing up Discord? Come on. I have my notifications on. That's my mistake, I guess. All right, cool. Got the right tab up. Let me close Discord, for whatever reason, giving me notifications. I can turn on Do Not Disturb. There we go. Perfect. So that's the DraftKings board. What I want to take a look at is we'll go Prize Picks first. I actually think Prize Picks, I guess to give them a little bit of a pat on the back here, I think they're the sharper board out of the two sites. So I get more exposure on Underdog a lot because of that. So I kind of want to see where Prize Picks has things and then kind of compare that to Underdog after. So 68 strokes for Rory. That's pretty aggressive. I honestly would have expected him to probably be at like 60.5, maybe 69 strokes. So just based off that alone, this board seems aggressively low, which I understand conditions look a little bit easier, but that's, okay. And then the guys at the top are 71.5 for your, more scrubby players like Wesley Bryan, a 70.5 for Skin, 70 Woodland, good reference points. Let's look at birdies are better. 4.5 for Rory. I guess I understand that projection, but the 68 strokes is a pretty. I guess it makes sense within that reference point, but I don't know. I definitely wouldn't be taking an under on him at 68 strokes. That's for sure. If anything, this birdie line would make a lot more sense. But 3.5 birdies for a lot of your mid-tier, 4 for a few. They don't have a bunch of 4s up, but it's like Cam Young, Thigala that they're posting at that kind of number. I think the PM wave is the easier side of the draw. So if anything, if I was going to take overs, I'd be looking for the PM guys. If anything for unders, I'd be looking for early guys, right, that are playing when it's a little bit cooler. And then with strokes, right, it'd be unders on PM guys, and then overs, right, at some of the super early starters, which is completely backwards. By the way, if you think that's weird, if you've maybe not been following for a while, or maybe you're just joining the live stream and you go, that's backwards of what you normally have. It is, and that's by design, right? Conditions today reflected that, right? PM wave played easier. It's because it's going to warm up as the day goes on. So bear with us. It's a little bit of a different slate. These greens lines are higher, and the average is about 12 per round. So I understand why they have some guys at 13.5, but just based on form, just based on averages alone, there's definitely going to be some fades that we can take. So I'm kind of liking that. Let's look at fairway. So the fairway average was about 7.6 per round. I thought it might be 8 per round. I was wrong on that. It was only about 7.6. Let's see, 8.5. Like there's potentially a few fades that we could take there. But yeah, greens regulation for sure. A few guys I thought we could take unders on. But let's look at Underdog. This is where I think we could really have some value, especially if they'll post fairway and green props for once, which they didn't do for round one, presumably because they've been spanked on them so much. And look at this. We do have green props. So Rory at 13.5 greens. That is a tempting fade, by the way. Fleetwood's at 13. I don't know if that one's as tempting as Rory, but that's an aggressive projection. Let's see. Sam Burns is at 13. He's PM wave, right? So if anything, like I'd want to fade the early guys. And especially an early guy like Sahith, he's actually at 13.5 on Prize Picks. I wasn't gonna talk through all the plays over there yet, but that was actually one I wanted to point out. So we'll circle back to that. I'll talk through all my reasoning there, but even 13 on Underdog is probably too high. Let's see. I'm glad they have these up for once. That's good to see. And I guess I can't completely ignore the other categories. So 67.5 for Rory. They have them even lower. Like at that point, I'd even consider an over. Like just to, I guess, get some perspective here. Let me see what they have them at on some of these other sites. So he's at 67.5. Look at that. Minus 160 juice. See, that's round score. I'm just trying to bring up my control F here so I can search. See, he's minus 150 over. And then, yeah, they have round scores posted. Rory is minus 150 over. Ugh. See, it's Rory, so it's probably not a good fade, but maybe we can find some other spots, right, that have that same kind of juice. Because this course isn't a complete pushover. That's for damn sure. But if I was going to do anything at that line, it would definitely be the overside, right, with all that juice. What's going on? Go Kullet. I never know how to say your name properly, but what's going on, buddy? Hopefully you're doing good. And you got the ship it stuff down there as well. Yeah, they're our sponsor here, by the way. So appreciate you throwing that down in the chat. Love your videos, bro. Thanks for the info. Of course, appreciate you. Let's see. Late Luke, all good, Ross. Better late than never, of course. But saying what's up, going to the beginning, though. Hope all is good. Appreciate you, Ross. When you get to this section of the video, cheers to you. I'll get you a cheers of my water. So it's fun to few props on here that makes sense. I'm thinking there's probably some fades, is what I'm thinking. At least fade value. It looks like some stuff already moving, which is not a surprise. They're the most fade-happy website in human history. So let me see what they have Thigala at on these websites. So here's Sahith. He's at 69.5, right? So he's an entire stroke and a half higher than what they have him at Underdog. On a price specs, what is Thigala's strokes line? He's at 69 strokes. He's going off early, right? So he has that working against him. This is definitely a potential fade. Now, I like Sahith this week, but 2 under par would push that, right? And I think that would be an excellent round. Like early guys are like fading, and then we can find some unders or better props for the PM guys to offset it, right? Because they're going to have the better conditions. So just off the top of my head, guys like Norn for an over on birdies don't make the worst amount of sense. The average today was a lot lower than what we're used to seeing, though. So that was a little bit of an issue with this, but there were still guys that were making birdies. We could go double fade. So I'm going to take them out there for now. We could always just go double fades. I'm not against doing that. So Aaron Rye has an early tee time, but he's at 69 strokes. Corey Connors tears up these Canadian Opens. He's at 68.5 too, right? So he's not down there at 68. Who else could be mixing? I'm looking for AM Wave fades right now. Lowry could be a potential spot, but what would be fade him for? I guess birdies, maybe strokes. Just to, I guess, find this comparison. Lowry is at 69.5. He is juiced under, right? So should probably be at 69. Speaking of on prize picks, he's at 68.5. So he's at the same number in prize picks. So I guess he's technically value. But I prefer ones here like Sahith that are that full stroke discrepancy. So let's see. Who else could be a look here? What is Tommy Fleetwood fairway greens at, I should say, over here? So he's at 12.5. He's at 13 over here on this site. So maybe in the AM wave, right, when the air is a little bit, cooler, right, a little bit harder to get the ball through. Maybe that's a look. Let's see. Who else is AM wave? So Akshay. I like Akshay this week, though. So again, it's kind of tough to want to fade him. But 12.5 greens, that makes sense. He's pretty good at hitting greens. We could go, again, the other aspect of this is if we do try and take a PM wave player and take them for something positive, we do get the better payout. So the way that we could do this is, let me see like what they have Alex Noren at. Now, I think compared to the sportsbook odds, I don't think we're going to be getting a favorable number. But yeah, like look at this, right? Like Noren is just way under 69.5. So today I took him for his under at 2.5 bogeys, and he hit at that. Right, he obviously went under that, made it a little bit close. Bogey average was 3.7 per round. That's actually kind of wild. I didn't realize it got that bad towards the end of it. I know he didn't make a lot of birdies today. If we take a look at his stat profile, wasn't really pretty, right? Because what he ended up shooting, like even par by the end of his round. So yeah, even par already gained to putting. He actually lost on approach, which is unlike what he's been doing recently. I'm tempted to take this birdie mark, and I'm not sure if they even have a lineup for him on Prize Picks. They do. He's actually at 3.5 birdies. The more intriguing thing is if they have a lineup on FanDuel up for birdies, which it doesn't look like they have them up quite yet, but Caesars and William Hill probably do. So let's check that out. They might not have it up for Alex Noren, but we might have like other players that we can compare to. So yeah, no Noren, right? But McIntyre's up and he's even money. And Noren's playing a lot better golf than Robert McIntyre is. Now, I wouldn't say he's quite Sam Burns level, right? But Burns is minus 175 over. Aaron Rai, I'd say pretty comparable to Noren. I'd say Noren a little bit better than Aaron Rai, at least per most stats and definitely recent form. He's even money at 3.5. Tom Kim, maybe a little bit better than Noren, right? He's minus 150 odds. Huh. Okay. I think that compared to some of the stuff that we saw there, that's maybe not the worst bet. I can see why guys like Burns are at 4 birdies right over here on the Prize Picks board. But with trying to kind of anti-correlate this and get a payout, he wouldn't be the worst option. Now, if we go through some of the other PM options, Keith Mitchell would have hit that today. He would be an option on that. I think if we bring up the birdie or better board on the PGA site, I know Keith's up there. I know Keith's top 20 in birdie or better percentage, but I believe Noren is too. Noren's having a hell of a year. He is a little bit more conservative, so I could see him being ranked lower. But let's just double check that. Let's bring it up here. We have time to research this and find the best plays. Bring you guys the highest hit rate props. All right, so here's birdie or better percentage. I already know where Keith Mitchell is. I don't need to check that. He's top 20. Noren is number 71 on the PGA Tour. So maybe we could do better. I'm going to keep both in there for right now. What else do we have? So Tom Kim is PM Wave. He's at 4, though. Højgaard's at 3.5. He's PM, but he's kind of like Noren, right? He's going to be around like 60, 70 in the category. Same thing with somebody like an Adam Scott. Nick Taylor's at 3.5. See, the guys that are at 3.5 birdies here just aren't convincing players, right? They aren't the sort of guys that you feel great about, right? Taken for an over. Now, if there was somebody to do it on, I guess it might be Keith. It might be Alex Noren. What I want to check up on are the stats for both players. So I already looked at Noren here. What I'm going to check on now is the Keith Mitchell stuff. So Mitchell actually gained with the putter, which is very unlike his game. And then he lost with the approach play. It's a little bit of a red flag for me. Now, could he turn it around? Absolutely, especially because he's in the proper wave. But that's the only hesitancy with some of those guys at 3.5. What I feel a little bit better about is taking the double fade slip. So with the double fade slip, we're trying to take guys that are teeing off early that have inefficient projections. So what I'm hopefully trying to find here are maybe some 68.5s on some morning players that just aren't doing it, right? That aren't the sort of guys that I trust to get through that. Eric Cole could be one. I just don't feel like we're going to have an odds to compare to, but maybe I'm wrong. Let's double check it. So yeah, Eric Cole doesn't look like we have odds there. Maybe we do over here on FanDuel. Worth checking. Nothing there. How about Caesars? My guess is no, especially if it's not on the other two sites, but let's see. So yeah, nothing over there to compare to. But he's at 69, so like maybe you could take his over on strokes. Like, I don't know. Let's see. Who else could we look at? There's Batia there at 69. For comparison's sake, what is Eric Cole over here? Who may or may not have a line over here in Prize Picks. So nothing posted on Prize Picks, but if I'm looking for comparable players, Eric Cole would probably be at 69.5, I'd have to imagine. Like, EVRs in the morning, he's at 69.5. Which, by the way, I actually don't hate for an under. Now that I'm thinking about it, like I know he's AM wave, but still EVR to shoot under par, like it's at least it's not far fetched. But yeah, a lot of his same sort of level players are at 69.5. So we could go that direction. We could go the Eric Cole fade, who I hate to say it because I liked him this week. I really do. So maybe we don't take him specifically, but we could just try and find like an AM guy who's struggling, right? And try and find somebody who maybe has a little bit of bitch quit in them. So just going through this list, not a lot of these guys played horribly today. Like Sahith obviously is the one that we already have locked in there. He didn't play very well. Let me see what the Fleetwood line was. They took that off. So yeah, he's at 68.5 now. We could go to his the green fade that I was looking at before, right? I mentioned that, right? The one that's 0.5 lower on Prize Picks. Who else is an option though? Rye is, but the projection, he's at 13. So what is he at Prize Picks? He may or may not even have a projection. He's actually at 13.5. So that's they're going crazy with the projections. They must think it's going to play way easier tomorrow for some reason. I honestly don't see that. It's not like it's going to rain a bunch overnight, at least based on the forecast that I've been looking at. So Mackenzie Hughes, what is he at? They have him at 11 greens. That is crazy low. Jesus. Cam Young, 13. Yeah, I already looked at the Akshay ones. Who else? Corey Connors is not a great player to fade for those kind of things. Yeah, they got Hadwin way lower. And what was Cole? Cole's, yeah, he's a. They got the Slappies projected way lower, I guess, except for Fleetwood. And I'm not going to call Fleetwood a Slappy. I really like him this week as well. So, unfortunately, the guys that you'd be hoping to fade out here, they priced pretty well. They went out there, they put them at lower projections. The only real one that you could kind of pick on would be Rye, but he's at a better projection right over there on Prize Picks. So for the sake of this, I think it is this Tommy Fleetwood fade. I don't know Tommy Fleetwood's green and regulation percentage off the top of my head, but I know it's not like elite level stuff. So let me just double check on it. Actually, we can just bring it up here on live stream. So let's go to the approach play, green and regulation percentage. I believe he's top 50 on tour, but I just want to get an actual number on it. It's 2 M's in Tommy. He's number 126. Oh boy. I know he's been better with the irons recently, though. So just for some context, he's actually losing 0.3 strokes with the irons per round. Though I love Tommy this week, I bet him outright. And I like Sahith too, guys. I kind of hope I'm wrong on this slip. Right? If I ended up missing this, right, that means that Sahith maybe makes the cut. It means that Tommy Fleetwood, right, probably gets in contention. But fact of the matter is, per the stats, that both of these are definitely solid plays. It pains me to do it, but I'm going to fade both of them here for the 2.8x payout. So it's the over on Sahith strokes. Once again, if you want the comparison there, Sahith is at 69.5. Albeit juiced way under over here on DraftKings, but that's an entire stroke and a half discrepancy. He is at 69 strokes on Prize Picks. And then the Fleetwood prop is 0.5 lower on Prize Picks. But more importantly, he's in the AM wave. Same thing with Sahith, which I think will be harder conditions. He's number 126 on tour. I didn't realize this. In green regulation percentage. That is atrocious. That is worse than the field average. So if the field average was about 12 per round, well, he's at least 0.5 too high, right? If not an entire green regulation too high. So that's the first underdog slip. We'll probably circle back and maybe enter another one there. Now I want to look at Prize Picks where they have Sahith at 13.5, and I hate to double up on the same player, so maybe we make it somebody else, but this board's also too high in my opinion. Early starters, unders on birdies or strokes. So the early starters I actually think are on a harder golf course. So maybe overs on strokes, and maybe you could go unders on birdies, but I think overs and strokes may be better. Bogey average, we're definitely brought up by the amateurs. You're right. And same thing with the birdie average, right? The players that are better, right? The players that are on the prop boards are some of your better options. So that's something that I always account for, regardless of the tournament we're at. Majors, events like the Century Tournament of Champions, there's not as big an effect, but full field events, for sure, I have to account for that. And then especially like PGA Championship, US Open, where you have the amateurs and qualifiers, it really matters there. And then like a week like this too, for sure. You're right. Hubbard, 3.5 birdies. We could take a look at that. Yeah, and Højgaard, 3.5. Hubbard's one of your better birdie makers on tour. And yeah, he's PM wave. That could be a really good look. Is +4 out of the cut? They could still make it, but they're going to have to go low, Phil. Right? They're going to have to go put the pedal to the metal, shoot -3, maybe -4, maybe even -5. So it's not out of question, but it's tough. Pick 6 has some good options. Let's take a look. Prize Picks will find some stuff. I promise you guys, we'll get there. But if there's quote unquote good options on Pick 6, I'm a buyer. Let's take a look. So PGA Tour stuff's up. So let's go to the birdie board first. 5 and oh wow, yeah, they went a little nuts with this, huh? So 4.5 on some options is quite the eye-opening thing to see. Let's go to strokes. So I'm assuming they're way lower, of course. And they are. Yeah, they're way lower pretty much in every option. If I was going to do this, I would fade AM players, right? So guys that are going off in the harder conditions. Again, I like Tommy Fleetwood this week, but like even an over on bogeys is something that I would consider. Out here from the birdie board, you can find some AM guys and maybe take their unders on birdies. So I think Corey Connors is going off early, right? There's some other guys here that would fit that too. Strokes, you can do the same thing, right? There are some AM starters that you could fade here too. Off the top of my head, I don't know if these guys are AM or not. So let me check Hisatune. So Hisatune is AM. So yeah, like maybe you fade him at 68.5. McIntyre, I'm pretty sure is AM. So maybe you could potentially, take his over in strokes. Yeah, I guess, yeah, Hisatune over, McIntyre over, maybe a Fleetwood over on bogeys. And then, yeah, you'd probably have to find an under to mix in. So the best board to do that would be potentially over here with birdies, right? Try and find one of these 4.5s. Corey Connors, just to double check that, right? Yeah, he's an AM wave golfer. I mean, he could easily get to 5+, though. That's the issue, right? It's Corey Connors. He's not a complete sloppy, but that's at least one that I would throw into the bucket and consider out there for my action. So we'll have to see with Pick 6. I can't enter it myself, obviously, or get my own exposure. But if you're looking for fades, which I think there are some live ones, right? We just took 2 over there in Underdog. Pick 6 is the spot to do it. I mean, this board is a little out of hand, I would say, when it comes to the pricing. All right, so we got that under on Sahith locked in. Yeah, a lot of the same kind of birdie options. Like you pointed out Norn before, like I think he's in play. You could always say that somebody like Pendrith is in play for a birdie prop. Right, Mitchell, who's going off later. Let's look at strokes. Actually, what I want to do is I want to bring up the pin sheet, because if the par fives, here's what I'll say. If the par fives are as easy as today, because they were set up for very simple pin locations, then maybe I am a buyer on these 3.5 birdies, because that's the real decider for me into what we got pin locations actually an entire hour ago. So we could have checked this earlier. But where are the par fives? So first par 5 is hole 4. Okay, I've run multiple tabs over here. My apologies. So hole 4 doesn't look like a terrible pin location. And then what was the other one? The other one is hole 17. 17 is a back left pin, which once again isn't quite as easy as the pins that we had for today. but neither one's a brutal pin location. What I want to look at now are some of the other shorter par fours. The one that's borderline drivable is hole number 5. So that's one to always look at. Hole 5 is in the back now. So if anything, that's actually a little bit harder. Okay. So we're actually seeing the opposite, right? Of what would want to make it, of what we'd want to see to go out there and take like some overs on birdies. And then what was the other hole that we want to look at? There's another like borderline drivable one that I want to look at. So I guess 10. 10's probably worth a look. Let's see. 10's there in the front. So I think 10's going to be scoreable. It wouldn't surprise me if some of these pin locations were in bowls. A lot of them are pretty far from the side, but there's low winds. It kind of looks like they're expecting that and are accounting for that out there in their pin sheet. I would say that this scoring average from round 1 is perhaps actually going to, it's going to be a lot closer to the PM scoring average than it was the AM, but I don't think it's going to be better than half a stroke over par for the field. I think, if anything, it's going to be a little bit harder than what we saw for this afternoon because these pins are not very straightforward. So I was kind of hoping to see easier pins so we could go over here and be like, oh, yeah, I'll take it over on all these guys for birdies. But if anything, I think the fades might be the way to go. So we've got this over on greens. Maybe we can kind of finagle a payout, maybe take like an over on fairways, kind of offset this. Let's see. What do we got? Cole fairways. Yeah, let's take a look at it. Hopefully you're having a good day. I am. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate the thoughts there and appreciate your streams. Thank you for all that, man. Let's get this. So somebody mentioned Cole fairways. I guess let's deep dive that. He's not the best driver. That's the issue with this prop. Is I kind of get why he's at 7.5. That's about the average, by the way, for the field, 7.5 fairways. So to give you his driving accuracy, which I'm assuming has not gone better from last year. Last year it was atrocious. So he's number 70 in tour, which is actually a lot better than I thought. So he's a slightly above average player when it comes to his driving accuracy. The issue is, let's go back to the other tab there, where the average was 7.63. So if his number, right, is 7.5, he's pretty much at the average. So that's maybe not my favorite prop. I guess I don't think I have the whole board loaded in here. Actually, yeah, that's probably over on Underdog, huh? Where you're taking that one. Let me see what we have here in Prize Picks. I don't hate the idea of a Keith Mitchell. Mitchell can be very accurate off the tee. Even a Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor screwed me today, but historically is a much more accurate driver than what he showed. I think Nick Taylor is like almost for sure the option. And then Sahith under greens. What is Sahith's green number? I guess that's the deciding factor because I already know I'm totally fine with the Nick Taylor prop. Him going under today was a complete fluke for him. But let me look at this Sahith prop. 13.5 is too high. I can tell you that much. It's definitely a lean on the under, but he is number 22 on tour at hitting greens. Who are the other fades that we could take? So Rye is an AM wave tee time, just like Sahith. So if we wanted to spread out our fades a little bit, we could go that direction. I know Rye also hits greens, so it's not like it's a better stat fade, right? He's actually number 5 on tour at hitting greens. But this golf course has a decent amount of rough, and that kind of trips up Rye because he's not the most burly player. So we could go with that. Shane Lowry, I think, is in play as well at 13. 12.5, we could take some unders on guys that are just like kind of below average iron players to begin with. So a few that kind of stick out is I want to look at McIntyre stats. I want to look at Buckley stats. And then mainly those two. Yeah, McIntyre and Buckley. Because I have to think that both rank extremely poor, especially Buckley. So let's look at McIntyre is 60th. Okay. And then what is Buckley? 156th. So I hate picking on Buckley, but I faded him a ton last week and it made me a lot of money. This is the slip that we're going to go with over here on the Prize Pick side. So Over on Nick Taylor fairways, he is an above average fairway player, just to give you some context. And then Hayden Buckley under on greens, who's a well below average green player. And he's playing in the harder AM conditions. I guess what I'll show you with the Nick Taylor, right, is some of the driving stuff. Is he's not like an elite driving accuracy player, but he's above average in the category. So let's bring up Taylor here. I'll show you there. So Nick Taylor, right, number 78 on tour this year when it comes to driving accuracy. If you go back to the year before that, he's number 114. So again, he's not ever elite in the category, but he's always pretty decent when it comes to the driving accuracy. So at that number, I'll take the over. At this golf course in 2019, he went over that number in all 4 rounds. So at 7.5, sign me up for that kind of prop. So that'll be it for that. I want to circle back to Underdog now because it felt like there was a lot of value to be had there. Keith Mitchell, 7 fairways. Sign me up is what I say to it. So I'm assuming that's on Underdog, huh? Yep. That's a great prop. Great shout on that. Who was that? That was Will Hammer Golf. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, I think that's a sharp take. Let me get some more water. I already finished my entire water bottle. So thankfully I had a second one here. So another way to kind of offset some fades, right? Obviously the props that we already took were both fades, right? We got slightly under a 3x payout. If we take Keith Mitchell for the over on fairways, we can offset that and take, a fade and actually get over a 3x payout. So I don't hate the idea of Eric Cole, but let's see if we can line shop and find somebody that's better for this kind of situation. I kind of don't want to pick on Cole because once again, he was one of my top plays heading into the week. So it kind of feels like nasty wanting to take it over for him, but I'll do it. Right? I'm not immune to going out there and betting against the guys that I've taken prior. It's again, I avoid it when I have to, but I'll do it if it's necessary. Where else do we have? Damn, he might be the best option because we already took the Sawhith prop. I mentioned Rory being a fade, but it's not my favorite spot. Oh, let me check something. 1 second. So I'm still limited. I was double checking something to see if I was still limited $100 per player. See if I could circle back and take one of those first 2 options, but I cannot. So that's a little bit of a bummer, I suppose. You could just mix this in with the first 2 props. Doing that would give you a much better payout because it's an over on fairways. It kind of offset the correlation of those 2 unders, those 2 fades that we took. If I'm going to try and find another piece of exposure to mix in, perhaps it's an over on Shane Lowry. Like I know the juice favors this. He also didn't have his best stuff. Now, I don't know if we can just count on that happening again. Right? Like it was just one isolated bad round for Shane, but shooting 2 under par at this golf course is clearly not easy to do. So yeah, he's at 69.5. Let me just double check this. I think we looked at this before, right? Yeah, he's at, I believe, 69.5 on all these different sites. He's at the same projection. Here's the weird part, right? He's at the same projection over here on Prize Picks. I guess that was my hesitation. His greens line is lower. I agree with that, by the way. The real fade might be birdies. I could see him getting to 4, but I'm not sure if he's going to post 5+ in those, cooler conditions. And just to double check on his birdie average from this year, which he's been better lately, so he's been improving on this metric for sure. So we have to keep that in mind when we look at these season-long stats. But it's loading this birdie or better percentage here at some stage. And on the season, Shane Lowry is number 30. So he hasn't been terrible. He also hasn't been like Scotty Scheffler level. Birdie average for the field right was like 3.1 per round. To give you an idea on Prize Picks, they don't even have him on the board. So they're probably projecting him for like 3.75 birdies. And that's probably why they don't have him on the board, right? Because they don't want to post him at 3.5 or 4 birdies, right? Because they think it could go either way. This is the way I would lean on it. I'm not sure if I'm going to enter this as of right now. Again, I like the fade a little bit more because it's an AM wave golfer, right? You're going against Shane Lowry there. The stats, I guess, would be the X factor here, right? Like, how did Shane play today? So, in terms of the shots gained metrics, Lowry lost in every category except for around the green. Interesting. That's not very good. Makes you wonder, like, what's happening, right? If he's having that poor of a performance. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to enter it here in live stream, but that's a little bit of brainstorming I can give you guys there. Again, some props over the different sites. We'll go over any last second questions. If not, we're going to hop on out of here, guys. What is the difference between regular showdown and late? Late showdown, just a smaller player pool. I think the pricing is a lot different, and the scoring might have some slight tweaks. Nick Taylor is 7 fairways and underdog. Oof. So now that you say it, maybe it's just these two for overs on fairways, right? Maybe that's the way to do it. Thank you for the shout out. I would have eventually seen that, but I appreciate you for doing that there. I'm going to take that and call it a slip out there with those two. So appreciate the shout out. That chat doing wonders out there. Lowry over 2.5 bogeys. Yeah, that could be a look too. I do think that the bogey average at 3.78. Yeah, honestly, yeah, 2.5 bogeys. Something I'm gonna have to look at with a few props myself. Will Frank says, do I like Woodland over birdies? What is his prop? I'm assuming that's on Prize Picks, right? He's 3.5. I would probably stay away, Frank. I'm right at like 3.5 birdies. Hopefully that's helpful for your round 2 exposure, guys. Go ahead, smash the like button if you guys haven't already. Also, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our round 3 and 4 live streams. We're going to go through the weather, do the same things that we did out here for Saturday and Sunday's action. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. And best of luck out there with whatever you're placing tomorrow, whether it's those GPP lineups, which hopefully you can take down a few contests, whether it's out there on the prop side, going out there and trying to take home some profit there. Best of luck in your endeavors. So appreciate you guys here. Smash the like button if you haven't already. I'll see you guys for that live stream out there tomorrow night.